In the world of television, the boundary between audience and performer is sacred. But what happens when someone crosses that line? Not for disruption, but because they recognized a truth that no one else could see. That's exactly what happened during a seemingly ordinary taping of Family Feud, when an elderly audience member named Eleanor Wright did something that made Steve Harvey immediately stop the entire production. What unfolded next would teach everyone present, from the contestants to the crew, a powerful lesson about intuition, compassion, and the unexpected connections that bind us all together. The day had started like any other at the Family Feud studio in Atlanta. It was mid-September 2024, and the production team was in the middle of their fourth taping of the day. Steve Harvey, dressed impeccably in one of his signature suits, was engaging the audience during a break while the crew reset for the next segment. The Rodriguez family from Phoenix was facing off against the Thompson family from Chicago. Both families had been selected not just for their personalities, but for their compelling stories. The Rodriguezes were a multi-generational family whose grandmother had started a successful bakery after immigrating from Mexico 30 years earlier. The Thompsons were a blended family who had met through a community service organization where they all volunteered. In the audience that day sat 76-year-old Eleanor Wright, a retired emergency room nurse from Savannah, Georgia. She had received tickets to the show as a birthday gift from her grandson Michael, who worked as a production assistant on another show filmed in the same studio complex. Eleanor hadn't particularly wanted to come. Large crowds made her anxious, but Michael had insisted that getting out would do her good. "Grandma, you spent 40 years saving lives," he had told her. "Now it's time to enjoy yourself a little." Eleanor sat in the middle section of the audience, about 10 rows back from the stage. She wore a simple blue dress and a pearl necklace that had belonged to her mother. Throughout her career, Eleanor had developed what her colleagues called an uncanny intuition for medical emergencies. She could often spot the signs of a serious condition before tests confirmed it. This intuition had saved countless lives during her decades in the ER. As the taping resumed, Steve Harvey was in top form, bantering with the contestants and keeping the energy high. The Rodriguez family had just won the first round and was selecting a family member to play fast money. "We choose Dario," announced the family captain, pointing to a young man in his early 30s. Dario Rodriguez approached the podium, looking confident but nervous. He adjusted his glasses and gave a thumbs up to his family. The studio lights brightened as the crew prepared for the fast money segment. From her seat, Eleanor watched Dario carefully. Something about his appearance caught her attention. While everyone else saw a healthy, excited contestant ready to play, Eleanor noticed subtle signs that triggered her medical instincts. A slight yellowish tint to his eyes, barely perceptible under the studio lights, and an almost imperceptible tremor in his right hand when he gripped the podium. "Those aren't nerves," Eleanor whispered to herself. Her mind raced through possibilities based on these subtle symptoms. Steve Harvey began explaining the rules of fast money to Dario, who nodded enthusiastically. The audience was fully engaged, enjoying the familiar rhythm of the show. No one noticed Eleanor becoming increasingly concerned as she observed Dario from her seat. When the game was about to begin, Eleanor made a decision that would change everything. She stood up. "Stop the game," Eleanor called out, her voice carrying clearly through the studio. "That young man needs medical attention right now." The entire studio fell silent. Security guards immediately moved toward her, assuming she was a disruptive audience member. Steve Harvey turned toward the commotion, initially annoyed at the interruption. "Ma'am, we're in the middle of taping a show here," Steve said, trying to maintain his composure while giving a subtle signal to security to handle the situation. Eleanor stood her ground as 2 security guards approached. "I was an emergency room nurse for 40 years, she said firmly. That contestant is showing signs of acute liver distress, the yellowing of his eyes, the slight tremor. He needs medical attention immediately. The security guards reached Eleanor and gently took her arms. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us," one of them said quietly. Steve Harvey, however, hadn't dismissed Eleanor's concerns. In his years of hosting shows, he'd learned to trust his instincts about people. Something in the elderly woman's voice, the certainty, the professional calm, made him pause. "Hold on a second," Steve said to the security guards, raising his hand. He turned to Dario at the podium. "Son, are you feeling all right?" Dario looked confused by the sudden attention. "I'm fine, just a little nervous, maybe a bit tired. I had some stomach pain earlier, but it's nothing." Steve looked back at Eleanor, who remained standing between the two security guards. The producers were frantically speaking in Steve's earpiece, urging him to continue with the show. "We can check him out after the segment," a producer's voice said in his ear. "We're on a tight schedule." Steve made a decision that defied his producers. He made a cutting motion across his throat, the universal sign to stop filming. "Cut the cameras," he said firmly. The red recording lights went dark. The audience murmured in confusion. "I'm stopping this taping right now," Steve announced, addressing both the audience and his production team. "This lady says there's a medical issue, and I'm not taking chances with someone's health." The executive producer rushed onto the stage. "Steve, we have a schedule to maintain. We can't just—" "Jameson," Steve interrupted. "If she's wrong, we lose 30 minutes. If she's right, we might save this young man's life. That's not a hard choice." Dario, still at the podium, looked increasingly uncomfortable. "Really, I'm okay," he insisted. But now even his family was looking concerned, noticing the unusual coloring of his eyes that Eleanor had pointed out. Steve invited Eleanor to come forward, while the show's medic was called to the stage. The audience watched in stunned silence as this unexpected drama unfolded before them. Not the game show they had come to see, but a real-life situation with potentially serious consequences. As Eleanor approached Dario, she maintained her professional demeanor. "Sir, I don't mean to frighten you, but I've seen these symptoms before. How long have you been feeling unwell?" Dario hesitated, then admitted, "Actually, I've been having pain in my abdomen for about a week, and I've been really tired. I thought it was just stress from work and excitement about being on the show." The show's medic arrived and began a basic examination, checking Dario's eyes and asking him similar questions. After a few minutes, the medic turned to Steve and nodded gravely. "She's right. He needs to go to a hospital. These symptoms could indicate several serious conditions." Steve looked at Eleanor with newfound respect. "You saw this from 10 rows back in the audience?" Eleanor nodded modestly. "When you've spent your life looking for symptoms, you notice things others might miss." The Rodriguez family gathered around Dario, concern evident on their faces. What had started as an exciting day competing for prizes had suddenly become a frightening medical emergency. The show's production team quickly arranged for an ambulance while Steve addressed the audience. "Folks, we're going to take a break in taping. This is not part of the show, but we have a real situation here. The contestant needs medical attention, and that's our priority right now." Some audience members were confused or disappointed, while others were deeply moved by what they were witnessing. The Thompson family, who had been competing against the Rodriguezes, approached their opponents to offer support. "Whatever you need, we're here for you," said Barbara Thompson, the matriarch of their family. "The game doesn't matter now." As paramedics arrived and prepared to transport Dario to the hospital, Steve Harvey stood center stage, visibly processing what had just happened. In an environment built around entertainment and manufactured excitement, reality had broken through in the most unexpected way. The studio audience was ushered to a waiting area as the medical team worked to stabilize Dario before transport. Steve Harvey, despite producers urging him to continue with a different family, refused to resume filming. Instead, he moved between checking on Dario's condition, speaking with the Rodriguez family, and personally thanking Eleanor for her intervention. "We're going to put a pause on everything today," Steve announced to the waiting audience. "What we just witnessed is far more important than any game show. In fact, it's a powerful reminder of what really matters in life." The audience, rather than being disappointed, responded with supportive applause. Many approached Eleanor to thank her for speaking up. Among them was Janet Miller, a middle-aged woman who had been sitting 3 rows behind Eleanor. "I'm a nurse too," Janet told her. "I saw something was off with that young man, but I second-guessed myself. I thought, who am I to interrupt a TV show? You've reminded me that our training doesn't stop when we're off duty." Eleanor squeezed Janet's hand. "In 40 years of nursing, I learned that hesitation can cost lives. Better to speak up and be wrong than stay silent and be right." The paramedics finally wheeled Dario toward the ambulance, his family following close behind. Steve accompanied them to the exit, assuring them that the show would cover all medical expenses not handled by insurance. "Don't you worry about a thing," he told Mrs. Rodriguez, Dario's mother. "Your son's health is all that matters right now." As the ambulance departed, the executive producer approached Steve with a concerned expression. "Steve, I want to apologize for trying to keep the show going. You made the right call, and I should have backed you immediately." Steve placed a hand on the producer's shoulder. "Jameson, we all get caught up in the machine sometimes, the ratings, the schedule, the pressure. But today was a wake-up call for all of us." Back inside, Steve gathered the remaining audience, both families, minus the Rodriguezes who had gone to the hospital, and the production team. The cameras remained off as he spoke from the heart. "I've been in entertainment for decades," Steve began, "and sometimes we forget that what we're doing here isn't just about making a TV show. It's about creating a space where people come together. Today, we came together in a way none of us expected." He gestured toward Eleanor, who stood quietly at the side of the stage. "This lady reminded us that really seeing other people, not just looking at them, but truly seeing them, can make all the difference in the world." Steve announced that everyone would receive tickets to return for another taping, but more importantly, he wanted to do something meaningful in response to what had happened. After conferring briefly with Eleanor and the producers, he made an unexpected proposal. "Ms. Eleanor, would you be willing to work with us to create a special episode about health awareness? Something that might help our viewers recognize warning signs in themselves or their loved ones." Eleanor considered the request. She had never sought the spotlight, but the opportunity to potentially help others was compelling. "If it might save even one life, I'd be honored," she replied. Over the next few hours, as the studio slowly emptied and the production team began planning for this unexpected development, Steve received a call from the hospital. He put it on speakerphone so Eleanor could hear. "The doctors have confirmed it's acute hepatitis," reported Mrs. Rodriguez. "They said if he hadn't come in today, it could have progressed to liver failure within days. They're already starting treatment, and they expect him to make a full recovery." The relief in the room was palpable. What could have been a tragic story had become one of hope and timely intervention. "Mrs. Rodriguez," Steve said, "please tell Dario that his spot on Family Feud is secure whenever he's well enough to return. And the Rodriguez family will be our honored guests, all expenses paid." After the call ended, Steve turned to Eleanor. "You know, in all my years hosting this show, we've had our share of surprising moments. But nothing like this, nothing that actually saved someone's life." Eleanor smiled gently. Sometimes the most important moments happen when we least expect them. That's why we always need to be paying attention. As the day wound down, plans began forming for what would become a special episode unlike any in the show's history. The production team, energized by this new direction, started reaching out to health organizations that might partner with them. Later that evening, as Steve was preparing to leave, he found Eleanor sitting alone in the now empty studio, looking thoughtful. "Penny for your thoughts, Ms. Eleanor," he asked, taking a seat beside her. "I was just thinking about Dario," she replied, "and about all the people who might be walking around right now with symptoms they're ignoring or don't recognize." Steve nodded. "That's exactly why what we're planning matters. Television can be more than just entertainment. It can actually make a difference." Eleanor turned to him with a warm smile. "You know, my grandson told me I should get out more, experience new things. I don't think this is what he had in mind." Steve laughed. "Well, remind me to thank him. Because of you, a young man's life was saved today, and who knows how many more might be saved by what we do next." As they walked out of the studio together, Steve couldn't help but reflect on how quickly priorities can shift when reality breaks through the carefully constructed world of television. What had begun as a routine taping had transformed into something far more meaningful, a reminder that behind every contestant, every audience member, every person we encounter, there's a complete human being with a life that matters. The security guard who had initially approached Eleanor now held the door for her, offering a respectful nod. "Ms. Wright, I hope you'll be coming back soon. Seems like we need more people like you around here." Eleanor patted his arm. "Young man, the world needs more people who are willing to really see each other. Today, that's exactly what happened." 2 months later, on a crisp November morning, the Family Feud studio was transformed. Instead of the usual game show setup, the stage featured a more intimate arrangement with comfortable chairs for conversation. Banners promoting the Family Feud Health Awareness Special decorated the set, alongside logos from several major health organizations that had partnered for the occasion. The audience seats were filled with medical professionals, health educators, and families with stories similar to the Rodriguezes, people whose lives had been changed by timely medical interventions. In the front row sat Eleanor Wright, dressed in a lovely emerald dress, her grandson Michael beaming proudly beside her. As the cameras began rolling, Steve Harvey walked onto the stage to thunderous applause. He looked more serious than his usual game show demeanor, though his warmth remained evident. "Good evening, and welcome to a very special edition of Family Feud," he began. "Tonight isn't about survey says or fast money. It's about something far more valuable, the gift of paying attention and the courage to speak up when it matters most." The show opened with carefully edited footage from that September day, showing Eleanor's intervention and the immediate aftermath. The cameras then returned to the present, where both the Rodriguez and Thompson families stood on stage, along with Eleanor. Dario Rodriguez, now fully recovered after weeks of treatment, stepped forward. "If Ms. Eleanor hadn't spoken up that day, doctors say I might have suffered permanent liver damage or worse. Her medical knowledge and courage literally saved my life." Eleanor, modest as ever, smiled warmly at Dario. "I'm just thankful I was there, and that Mr. Harvey had the wisdom to listen, even when it would have been easier to continue with the show." Steve placed his hand on Eleanor's shoulder. "In 40 years as an ER nurse, Ms. Eleanor saved countless lives. But even in retirement, she couldn't turn off that part of herself that cares deeply about others. And today, we're celebrating that spirit of caring." The special episode unfolded over the next hour, with powerful segments that blended education with emotional storytelling. Medical experts discussed the importance of recognizing early warning signs of serious conditions, while families shared their experiences of health crises caught just in time. Dr. Samantha Chen, a hepatologist who had treated Dario, explained the condition that Eleanor had recognized. Acute hepatitis can progress rapidly if left untreated. The yellowing of the eyes, what we call jaundice, is often subtle in early stages, especially under artificial lighting. Miss Wright's ability to notice this from a distance speaks to her exceptional observational skills. The show also featured a segment on the importance of health screenings and regular checkups, with Steve sharing his own experience of discovering heart issues during a routine physical. "I didn't have any symptoms I could recognize," he told the audience, "but that checkup might have saved my life." Sometimes the most dangerous conditions are the ones that don't announce themselves clearly. Midway through the program, Steve made a significant announcement. Family Feud is partnering with several medical organizations to launch an awareness campaign about recognizing early symptoms of serious conditions. The initiative will be named the Eleanor Wright Early Detection Program. The audience applauded as details of the program appeared on screen, a multi-platform educational initiative that would reach millions of viewers with potentially life-saving information. But Steve wasn't finished. Additionally, we've established a nursing scholarship in Eleanor's name at her alma mater, Savannah State University, to support future healthcare professionals who embody the same spirit of observation and compassion. Eleanor, clearly moved, wiped a tear from her eye as the audience gave her a standing ovation. "I never sought recognition," she said when the applause finally quieted. "In the emergency room, you learn quickly that it's not about who gets credit, it's about who gets helped. If this program helps even one person recognize symptoms that save a life, that's worth more than any award or recognition." The special continued with a segment featuring Janet Miller, the nurse who had been in the audience that day. She had started a program in her hospital, encouraging healthcare providers to trust their instincts and speak up when they notice concerning symptoms, even in unlikely settings. "Eleanor reminded me that our training doesn't stop when our shift ends," Janet explained. "Observation is a skill we develop, and it's valuable everywhere we go." As the program neared its conclusion, Steve invited the Rodriguez and Thompson families to the center of the stage. These two families never got to finish their game, and today we're going to rectify that with a twist. Instead of competing against each other, the families would join forces to play against a team of medical professionals, with all winnings going to health education initiatives. "But before we begin," Steve continued, "I want to make something clear. No matter who wins today's game, both families will receive the grand prize. The Rodriguezes, because their willingness to put health above competition, showed true character, and the Thompsons, because their immediate support for a family they were competing against demonstrated what really matters." The game proceeded with laughter and excitement, but with a different energy than usual, the competitive spirit tempered by the shared experience that had brought them all together. During a break in the game, Steve found a moment to speak with Eleanor privately. "You know, Ms. Eleanor, what happened that day has changed our show in ways I never expected. We're still having fun, still playing the game, but there's something different now. A deeper awareness that everyone we encounter is dealing with something we might not see." Eleanor nodded thoughtfully. "That's the most important lesson any of us can learn, Mr. Harvey. Behind every face is a full human story. The more we train ourselves to really look, the more we can be there for each other when it matters most." As the special episode approached its end, the game concluded with both families celebrating together, not just the prizes they had won, but the bonds they had formed through an unexpected shared experience. Steve faced the camera for his closing remarks. "Folks at home, the biggest takeaway from all this is simple. Pay attention to the people around you. Sometimes you might notice something others miss, whether it's a health symptom or just someone struggling in a way that isn't obvious. Speaking up might feel uncomfortable, but it could change everything for that person. He gestured to Eleanor, who joined him center stage. Ms. Eleanor didn't come to our show expecting to save a life. She came because her grandson gave her tickets, but her lifetime of paying attention meant she was ready when it mattered. And that's something all of us can learn to do better. Eleanor added her own gentle wisdom. We all have the capacity to see more clearly if we train ourselves to look. It doesn't require medical training, just a willingness to be present and to care enough to speak up. The camera pulled back to reveal everyone who had participated in the special, the families, the medical professionals, and the production team, all united by an experience that had transcended the game show format. Remember, Steve concluded, looking directly into the camera, life isn't just about fast money or survey says. It's about being present enough to see what matters. If you've enjoyed this special episode and the important message it contains, please like and subscribe for more content that celebrates the extraordinary moments that can happen in ordinary lives. And more importantly, share these health awareness tips with someone you love. Because sometimes noticing the right detail at the right time isn't just about winning a game, it's about saving a life. As the credits began to roll, the cameras continued filming as Steve embraced Eleanor. The Rodriguez family surrounded Dario with obvious love and relief, and the production team joined in the celebration of a television moment that had become so much more, a reminder of our shared humanity and the difference that truly seeing one another can make.